I can't tell you how much I sympathize with the way everybody has had to endure this unbelievably testing and challenging time.
In a deeply emotional moment, King Charles was reportedly moved to tears after facing an unexpected ultimatum from both Prince William and Princess Anne. During a tense family discussion, they demanded that he cut all ties with Camilla's family, a shocking request that has left the monarchy rattled. The revelation has sparked intense speculation, raising questions about hidden rifts, loyalty, and the stability of the royal household. But why would William and Anne push for such a drastic move? The answer may shake the crown's future. Royal tensions. Charles faces William and Anne's bold ultimatum. It should have been just another quiet day behind the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace, yet the air felt heavier than usual. Whispers swirled, faces tightened, and for a moment, even the chandeliers seemed to hang a little lower. The unexpected ultimatum delivered by Prince William and Princess Anne cut through the palace calm like a knife, silent, firm, and impossible to ignore. Their demand? That Camilla's family be removed from the royal circle. In doing so, they weren't just challenging tradition, they were sending a message that echoed through the halls. Privilege and influence, no matter how long cultivated, would not override legacy and transparency. For King Charles, the blow cut deeply, not just because it questioned the woman who had stood by him for decades, but because it came from two voices that mattered most. William, the heir, symbolizes the future. Anne, the loyal daughter, embodies tradition. When both spoke together, the message was unmistakable. The monarchy must come before personal attachment. The tearful confrontation that followed revealed more than hurt. It exposed a fracture within the royal household, where power, love, and duty collide. Days later, Buckingham Palace issued a terse statement confirming that restructuring the royal trust was part of a broader strategy to safeguard the monarchy's integrity. What observers noticed was equally important. There was no mention of Laura Lopes or Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's children. In royal language, omission signals exclusion, marking the family as peripheral, outside the crown's long-term vision. For Camilla, whose public image had only recently recovered, the silence was devastating. Her children, once quietly accepted, were now sidelined, a stark reminder of the monarchy's limits on influence. Behind the official words, questions multiplied. Was this truly about integrity, or a concession to pressure from William and Anne? Was Charles seeking compromise, hiding painful truths behind protocol? Social media erupted. Pundits debated, and headlines declared that the king had acted to protect the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana. To the public, it seemed a calculated effort to restore trust. Yet, it also hinted at private battles shaping the monarchy's future. In the quiet corridors of the palace, alliances shift. Silences echo louder than statements, and one truth emerges. The throne may endure, but its foundation is being rewritten before the world's eyes. But what secrets lie behind the palace shakeup, and who's really being sidelined? Stay connected to uncover the truth. The palace shakeup. A wave of whispers and headlines erupted almost immediately, as if the palace walls themselves had spilled secrets into the streets. Social media lit up in a frenzy, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all echoing the same sentiments. It's time to clean house at the palace, and Diana would be proud. For many, these weren't just catchy phrases. They carried decades of frustration, a public finally seeing the monarchy respond to perceived misuse of privilege. Camilla's family, long tolerated in the inner circles despite lacking Windsor blood, had quietly been removed from trusts, a move interpreted as both financial housekeeping and symbolic justice. The public reaction was electric, yet deeply rooted. For years, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles attending major events, sometimes even ahead of royal relatives, had sparked unease. To the traditionalists, the monarchy had bent its own rules, granting outsiders what should have been reserved for the crown. This sudden sidelining wasn't merely about money or etiquette, it was a reminder that legacies matter. Queen Elizabeth's name and Diana's memory remained untouchable, and the palace seemed keen to reaffirm that principle. Television analysts and pundits quickly pointed out that the support for the move didn't come from nowhere. It had been building for decades, fueled by the public's quiet resentment toward perceived favoritism and the shadow of Diana's unresolved story. The late princess's legacy, intertwined with compassion, courage, and sacrifice, suddenly became the moral compass guiding contemporary decisions. Every post, every viral clip subtly suggested that the monarchy could still honor those values, even if past choices had complicated the narrative. Yet within this surge of approval lay an irony. Charles, often criticized in his early reign for indecision, received rare praise for a step that, in truth, also reminded the nation of the consequences of his previous choices. The sidelining of Camilla's family symbolized both a restoration and a reckoning. For the public, it was vindication of years of unease, but also a reminder that Diana's shadow still shapes the throne, perhaps more profoundly than any current attempt at acceptance or popularity could erase. In this delicate balance of power, memory, and image, the palace achieved something unusual. It turned a quiet, administrative adjustment into a statement of values. Tradition, legitimacy, and legacy were reinforced, while whispers of scandal, favoritism, and oversight were pushed to the sidelines. For now, Charles enjoys a surge of support, the public briefly united in approval, and the memory of Diana once again standing at the center of Britain's imagination, guiding decisions from beyond the gilded gates. But what secrets are fueling the fierce divides behind palace walls? Stay with us to uncover the truth. Lines drawn. Behind palace walls. A quiet tension had settled over the palace, barely visible but palpable to those who knew where to look. Prince William, long silent and shaped by years of public duty, had watched the subtle movements of Camilla's family with a growing unease. Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles appearing at royal functions once reserved for direct heirs now felt less like courtesy and more like an encroachment. For William, still carrying the weight of his mother's legacy, the symbolism was impossible to ignore. Accepting Camilla as queen consort had been a necessary compromise for stability, but the integration of her family into the monarchy crossed a line he could not abide. Conflict, subtle yet searing, ran through the palace corridors. William confronted his father with candor in private meetings, insisting that this was not what Diana would have wanted. Charles, torn between his wife and his son, faced an impossible balancing act: preserve the crown while managing the rising tension between past loyalty and present pragmatism. Staff whispered in corners. Some loyal to Diana's memory quietly sided with William, while younger royals leaned toward flexibility and modernity. The divide was both philosophical and generational. Was the monarchy sacred tradition, or a living institution needing evolution to survive? The fissures became public in small, almost innocuous ways. William began to avoid Camilla's family events, standing apart with measured restraint. Observers noticed, tabloids speculated, and the optics grew sharper. The breaking point came when Laura Lopes was photographed touring the Duchy of Cornwall estates, traditionally under the heir's careful stewardship. To many it was a minor visit. To William it was a symbolic overstep, an assertion of influence where none should exist. Royal guards bristled, staff murmured, and William moved decisively. Access was frozen, responsibilities reassessed, and a quiet opposition to Camilla's family's integration took shape. Even Princess Anne, long known for her neutrality, sensed the stakes. The unspoken question loomed: how far could tradition bend before the monarchy's very spirit fractured? In the halls of St. James's and Clarence House, alliances were tested, loyalties measured, and boundaries redrawn. The heir to the throne was no longer just preparing for succession. He was defending a legacy, one rooted in duty, honor, and the enduring memory of Diana, shaping the monarchy not just for the present, but for the generations who would follow. This was not merely a family disagreement. It was a defining moment for the monarchy itself, a quiet storm unfolding behind gilded doors, observed by a world eager to read between the lines. But what secret ultimatum is Princess Anne hiding? And how will it shake the royal family? Stay connected. Princess Anne's silent ultimatum. The palace had always moved to its own rhythm, a careful dance of protocol, tradition, and hidden tensions. But a subtle storm was brewing behind those gilded doors, one that even seasoned courtiers could feel. Princess Anne, long the monarchy's steadfast anchor, noticed it first. Calm, measured, and rarely swayed by media frenzy, she had watched quietly as Camilla's children began gaining visibility, their access to events seemingly effortless. Anne's instincts told her something was amiss. It was only after a private, tense conversation with Prince William, disappointed, frustrated, and feeling sidelined, that Anne's quiet vigilance transformed into action. Observers say the Princess Royal shifted her behavior almost overnight. Invitations to Camilla's children's celebrations went unanswered. Public appearances alongside them vanished, politely explained away as scheduling conflicts, though insiders knew her true message. Royal duties were not to be shared lightly, and tradition was non-negotiable. Anne's intervention was never about personal rivalry. Her concerns centered on bloodline, heritage, and the invisible rules that had preserved the monarchy through wars, scandals, and upheavals. Camilla's family, however well-mannered, had crossed a line Anne could not ignore. She decided to confront the matter at the highest level. In a private meeting with King Charles and key advisors, she made her position unmistakably clear. "You are the king, authoritatively. You are your mother's son," she reportedly said, her tone firm but measured. Anne's message was not cruel. It was resolute, a reminder that the crown's stability came before convenience or favoritism. For the first time, Charles faced an impossible choice: loyalty to his wife versus preserving the monarchy's foundations. Anne's words cut through the personal and political fog, warning that weakening these principles for personal gain could invite historical judgment. She was a guardian of legacy, not a participant in palace intrigue, and she ensured everyone understood it. The public soon sensed the shift. Headlines speculated, debated, and celebrated Anne's decisiveness. Tabloids declared, "The princess takes a stand," praising her as the embodiment of Queen Elizabeth II's integrity and disciplined restraint. Meanwhile, scrutiny intensified on Camilla's family. The tide had turned. Behind palace walls, the once hidden friction erupted into a silent ultimatum. Tradition would not bend, and the walls of the monarchy were closing in. Anne had reminded the crown and the country that some lines were inviolable. In her quiet, uncompromising way, she had become both shield and signal, asserting that duty, blood, and history remained untouchable, even in a house often swayed by sentiment and spectacle. But what secrets lie behind the palace plea and this hidden shift? Stay glued to your screen for shocking revelations. The palace plea and the hidden shift. A tense hush had settled over Buckingham Palace, the kind that only comes before history quietly tilts. Queen Camilla, usually composed under the relentless scrutiny of the crown, approached King Charles not with fury, but with fear. A mother defending her children, a wife fighting to preserve a fragile legacy. In the quiet of a secluded room, away from cameras and advisors, she spoke softly yet urgently, laying bare a truth that few outside the palace corridors could grasp. Laura and Tom, her children, she explained, never sought titles or power. They only sought a place in the family, recognition and security within the institution. Yet beneath the calm words lay a frail reality. Camilla was grappling with the old shame of being a second wife, the lingering shadow of judgment, and the haunting possibility that history might dismiss her family as insignificant. Sources close to the palace reveal that she broke down, whispering to Charles, "This decision, it will tear us apart." The king, no stranger to public scrutiny or personal loss, felt a new kind of shock, one that struck at his heart rather than his reputation. Outside the room, palace corridors thrummed with uncertainty. Advisors urged caution, suggesting mediation, postponement, or compromise, trying to temper what they feared would become a public storm. But as whispers swirled, the unexpected happened. A leak, one carefully timed document shifted the balance of power within the monarchy. Suddenly, decisions that once seemed private became public, igniting speculation across social media, tabloids, and the global press. The narrative spun: loyalty, betrayal, and the unseen tug-of-war at the heart of the crown. Camilla's absence from official statements and events only added fuel to the fire. Some insiders claimed she had withdrawn to private estates like Ray Mill, while others suggested she had been deliberately sidelined, her influence eclipsed by a rising generation. William and Kate, appearing composed and resolute, began to shape initiatives in the shadow of her plea, reinforcing a subtle but unmistakable shift in the monarchy's future. In the quiet aftermath, Buckingham Palace became a stage for both heartache and strategy, where a mother's desperate appeal collided with an invisible power struggle. What seemed like a personal plea for family recognition revealed itself as the tipping point, a moment where emotion, loyalty, and ambition intertwined, and the royal order quietly began to rewrite itself. The leak, the plea, the absence — it was a silent revolution, and history watched in suspense. But what hidden secrets still lurk behind the palace gates, waiting to be revealed? Stick around, you'll want to see this. Secrets behind the palace gates. A single document, quietly unearthed, sent tremors through the corridors of power. When the draft surfaced from the Duchy of Cornwall archives, speculation turned into revelation. Hidden plans outlined the future management of royal estates, including centuries-old treasures, and named Laura Lopes as a potential trustee, a role far beyond the casual advisory position outsiders might expect. For many, it was a smoking gun. For insiders, it confirmed suspicions whispered behind closed doors for years. Camilla, it seemed, had quietly positioned her children at the center of the monarchy's financial heartbeat, not seeking titles, not demanding recognition. She moved with subtle precision, threading family loyalty through the kingdom's wealth and influence. King Charles, confronted with the papers, was reportedly stunned. He had imagined a separation between personal devotion and royal duty, but the documents revealed that distinction had blurred. Some viewed it as careful planning, others as a breach of trust. Princess Anne and Prince William, sensing urgency, carried the papers to Charles's office, perhaps dramatically, leaving no room for delay. A message was clear: the monarchy could not survive in the perception that the crown had become a private playground for family ambition. History had tested these walls with wars, abdications, and scandals, but public trust remained the crown's fragile foundation. Camilla's silence spoke volumes. As the news leaked, social media erupted across the Commonwealth. Hashtags trended, commentaries surged, and public opinion swirled with accusations of nepotism and manipulation. Headlines asked whether this was modernization or strategic overreach. Some demanded sweeping reforms. Others called for resignations. For the first time in his reign, Charles faced the stark reality of losing the populace he had inherited only reluctantly after Queen Elizabeth's passing. Emergency meetings convened, statements were drafted, and advisors debated options. But the momentum was unstoppable. The king stood at a crossroads. Acting against Camilla's influence risked betraying her trust, yet inaction threatened the monarchy itself. Every moment pressed upon him a reminder that the crown's destiny was entwined with public perception as much as lineage. Buckingham Palace seemed to hold its breath. In that charged atmosphere, the future of the monarchy hung in balance, shaped by ambition, loyalty, and the invisible hand of a family whose private decisions now resonated across the globe. But what secrets hide behind the locked gates of Clarence House, and why now? Keep watching. The Locked Gates of Clarence House. A sudden decree reverberated through Buckingham Palace, silencing hallways that had long echoed with careful politeness. King Charles III, on a day that would be etched in royal memory, issued a statement so decisive it redrew the lines of influence within the monarchy. Camilla's family, once quietly intertwined in royal affairs, was formally removed from trusts, privileges, and unofficial duties. No more shadow influence, no more access to wealth or decision-making. From that moment, the control of royal lands and finances was strictly reserved for direct successors of the House of Windsor, a permanent mark that closed a chapter and locked the gates. The tension behind the palace walls had been building for months, but the night before the announcement, private meetings unfolded in a modest, camera-free room. Witnesses recount that Charles, hands trembling, presented the signed decree to Camilla personally. He reportedly told her, "The monarchy must survive us both." His words spoke of duty and heritage, yet his eyes betrayed the weight of heartbreak, the knowledge that decades of scandal, seclusion, and public scrutiny were culminating in this irreversible moment. Camilla, according to insiders, maintained a stone-like composure before rising silently and leaving. There was no argument, no protest, only a thick, almost tangible quiet. For the first time, the queen consort, once a central figure, became a ghost in her own home, confronting the cruel reality that she and her family would forever be outsiders. The days that followed were marked by a conspicuous absence. Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles avoided public appearances, their silence speaking volumes. In interviews and podcasts, hints of conditional loyalty and polite distancing suggested a family both wounded and dignified, removed from the corridors of power, yet unwilling to completely sever ties with the institution. Their retreat contrasted sharply with the jubilant reaction outside the palace gates. Crowds in London waved banners declaring support for William and Anne, cheering a monarchy seemingly united. Commentators hailed Charles's decree as a bold, strategic move to protect the crown, while some whispered about the personal cost hidden behind the public celebration. Meanwhile, Camilla's apartments at Clarence House grew eerily quiet. She remained queen in title, but the trusted people who had once surrounded her were gone. The castle, once a seat of influence, had become a gilded prison. She was present, yet isolated, her power diminished by the very decree meant to safeguard the monarchy. In the interplay between public loyalty and private sorrow, a stark contrast had emerged: a united monarchy in appearance, and a fractured personal world behind closed doors, where loyalty, love, and survival collided in silence. This moment, whispered about in corridors and splashed across headlines, leaves one question lingering. Could the walls of tradition withstand such upheaval, or had a new order quietly claimed its place within the crown? But what truly lies behind the quiet fall of a queen consort, and how deep does it go? Stay glued. The quiet fall of a queen consort. The palace gates had always been a stage for power, pageantry, and whispers, but rarely had silence carried such weight. The queen consort, once central to royal life, began to fade, not with drama, but through absence, a slow unraveling that left courtiers and staff unsettled. Engagements vanished from her calendar. Familiar faces like Laura and Tom no longer walked the hallways, and dinners that once echoed with her laughter became muted affairs. Even King Charles, her partner in title, grew distant, their public appearances together now rare, their private conversations described as clipped and icy. Palace aides whispered of a transformation. Camilla had become withdrawn, her once crisp tone softened, her presence ceremonial rather than commanding. Speculation ran wild in tabloids. Was she ill, miserable, or quietly retiring from the monarchy she had worked decades to shape? The public saw only fragments, but within the palace walls, a strategic shift had quietly taken place. The realignment was not a scandal, nor a rebellion. It was history in motion, precise, calculated, and irreversible. Weeks later, a sealed document quietly entered the Windsor archives, marking the final step in an internal chess game years in the making. King Charles approved a new trust protocol. All royal estate management, ceremonial influence, and financial control would rest strictly with direct bloodline successors. Prince William, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte were now at the center, their roles preordained, secured, and unchallenged. For Camilla, this meant displacement from influence, her hopes of shared authority quietly dissolved. A personal letter from Charles arrived with the decree. No staff, no seal, only words acknowledging sorrow, misunderstanding, and inevitability. 7 chilling words ended her chapter. I had no choice. History required it. The result reshaped the monarchy without public conflict. Prince William's prominence surged. Anne returned to active duties, and the monarchy's approval rating climbed as the public embraced a new generation visibly leading with competence and empathy. Meanwhile, Camilla and her family withdrew, their brief, bold foray into royal life sealed as a closed chapter. The Buckingham Palace corridors held their hush. Portraits remained. Traditions endured. But the subtle shift was clear. A queen consort had become a figurehead, and the throne returned to the precise hands of bloodline heirs, solidifying the monarchy's lineage for generations. The story was neither scandalous nor sensational. It was a quiet, deliberate realignment, a reminder that in royal politics, absence can speak louder than presence, and strategy often wears the mask of inevitability. The crown had been preserved, a mixed dynasty quietly set aside, and the next chapter, shaped by William, George, and Charlotte, began under a meticulous, unyielding hand. So what do you think drove William and Anne to demand that King Charles cut all ties with Camilla's family? Could this shake the royal foundation? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to share them below.